United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, it is graduation day. After 4 years of intense training, 1,500 cadets are about to join the front line in defense of the American dream against any threat in this uncertain age of the new Cold War.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
President Reagan is among friends. In his 4 years, he's overseen the greatest ever growth in America's peacetime military budget, and the armed forces are in his debt.
The greatest privilege of my office has been to lead the people who defend our freedom and whose dedication, valor, and skill increase so much our chance to live in a world of peace. I believe that we've made great progress in our efforts to rebuild the morale and the readiness of our armed forces. Once again, young Americans wear their uniforms and serve their flag with pride, and our military forces are back on their feet and standing tall.
Reagan is here not only as president, but also as candidate at the start of his campaign to stay in the White House for another 4 years.
For America.
In this speech, he avoids talk of liars and cheats or the evil empire of the Soviet Union. Instead, he reverts to a theme which almost all Americans can embrace.
You understand the horrors of war, and you know that peace with freedom is the highest aspiration of our time. As a matter of fact, these past 4 years have prepared you to take your place in the best darn Air Force in the world.
The promise to preserve a strong America is a popular pledge, but the voters discern threats not only abroad, but also at home. To win in November, each candidate must reach into the heart of a nation where almost half the electorate don't vote, in which those who do are volatile and unpredictable. He must try to create a victorious coalition out of disparate demands, a coalition convinced that he is the man most likely to protect their share in the American dream. The Nemitz family, who farm in Nebraska, have not yet made up their mind how to vote. Although Adolf is a registered Democrat, he voted for Reagan last time. So did Gladys, but she warms to the prospect of a woman as vice president and may therefore vote for Mondale. The Democrats also promise to spend more on education, an important matter in this household.
I got an award yesterday, too, for outstanding membership in the band. So I got my name on the plaque. They have it engraved already.
Every one of us so far.
As Catholics and Conservatives, however, they find Mondale too liberal, especially on the question of abortion, which may finally persuade this family of Democrats to vote Republican once again.
You might just say that party politics are kind of inborn. You're probably just visiting with your family over the family table, and if you've been Republican all your life, you're probably Republican. If you were Democratic all your life, you're Democratic. And then these morals come in tie in with that. You either get quite liberal, even though you could be a Republican, or you could be quite conservative and be a Democrat. I think your lifestyle dictated that or ingrained that in your mind.
How do you decide to vote? How do you make your decisions in the general election?
Well, in the general elections, we always vote for the qualifications in the man. If he's got the qualifications that I subscribe to, I'll vote for him.
Come on, Lee. Take it down. All right, all right. All right, John.
At a youth club in suburban Chicago, Sheldon Proctor fulfills his weekly obligation to the community.
All right. Okay, what we got to do now is we got to get some more shots on goal. All right.
You might think that this commodity broker should be Republican. In fact, he inclines to the Democrats. As a yuppie, young and upwardly mobile, he got richer under Reagan, but remains averse to tax cuts that have made the poor poorer.
He's got to stand up there and block that shot. Ray went right through. You tell him where you want.
The yuppie vote is still unpredictable.
On 3, let's go Winslow. All right?
1, 2, 3, Winslow!
I right that you could come into a room like this and not know whether it was likely to vote Democrat or Republican?
And not care.
If you knew Vicky, you would know that it would be the Democrat.
But not care.
But not care.
Or independent.
In other words, it makes no difference whether she's voting for Mondale, I'm voting for Reagan. It's because they're so close, it really doesn't matter.
You think Reagan and Mondale are close?
I don't think. I mean, I think our problems.
Deficit will grow.
No, I think our problems are severe. I think the solution is not in sight. Whether you vote for one or the other, we're not going to get a solution.
That's what I mean too. I agree.
Yes.
And when I said that I thought that they were not different, I think it's that when I vote, I don't feel that a big difference will occur whether Mondale gets elected or Reagan gets elected. I don't think
The problems are going to be there.
Juan Domingo Sigüenza me llamo. Juan Domingo Sigüenza. Juan Domingo Sigüenza. Juan Domingo Sigüenza.
On issues like law and order, Democrat and Republican sound much alike. Each party vows to stamp on crime and put criminals where they belong, behind bars.
Juan Domingo Sigüenza me llamo. Si me quieren matar, maten. Me toma es maña vieja.
In America, liberals lose elections, while most of those who live in the inner city don't vote.
I lost my grip on him in there, and he just swung himself backwards.
So the Democrats, the party of compassion, avoid commitments to the poor, which might deter a middle class that tends to regard the downtrodden as feckless.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the first annual California, French, and Spanish champagne tasting.
Jeff Locke runs his own company and believes you should stand on your own 2 feet.
A little bit of a wine aficionado, and this happens to be my favorite type of wine altogether. I'd like to tell you a little bit about champagne to begin with, and then we'll get into the tasting. The champagnes that we'll be tasting today are Clear William Dukes. We're tasting also...
Most of his guests believe in that version of the American dream which has it that in this land, anyone who wants to can make it.
Aged gracefully, you'll find that the fragrances are very harmonious. Marie Antoinette recorded Louis XVI.
Reagan has made them richer, and most of them will reward him with their votes.
Commissioned the court sculptor to do a commemorative glass in her honor, and so he did, and it was molded in the shape of her breast.
There are many millions outside this circle who may not afford the style, but who share the faith. They are the haves, and unlike the have-nots, they vote.
Stand up the wine working all around your taste buds.
Those that were pressed mechanically.
Up and down your olfactory canal.
I missed 4 somewhere.
They're pressed by virgins?
Well, as far as conservative Republicans are concerned, the American dream is going to be a reversion back to some more traditional American values, which means minimal government, which means not having to go to Uncle Sam for every single thing that affects your life. This country was founded on things that have to do with minimum government, and that the fact that the individual should make his own way in life.
In America, both parties are open and unashamed about their commitment to capitalism. So the campaign for the blue-collar vote becomes a narrow debate about means, not ends. Traditionally, workers are Democrats, but last time their vote was decisive in securing Reagan's election. Today the economy is booming, and it's only the 8 million who are registered as unemployed who are certain to vote for Mondale, if they vote at all.
I don't have a future in the mills anymore. I have to get a job somewhere, somehow, and then go from there.
What are your hopes of getting what you want?
Oh, I'll get it, but it's going to take a while.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years.
The ad men package Reagan as if they were selling life assurance.
6,500 young men.
The pitch is calculated to reassure the electorate that the dream is coming true again, at least at home.
They can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger.
Abroad, the great issues of war and peace, which matter greatly in this election, have existence here only as a celebration of log cabin patriotism.
Graduates of the class of 1984, will you please raise your right hand? Do you, and each of you, having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force, solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies?
At the Air Force Academy, patriotism is pervasive, and so is the sense that the enemies of America are a worldwide threat, with their headquarters located in the Kremlin.
About to enter, so help you God.
Why are you Soviets doing those things? Why are you conscripting all your people every 6 months? Why are you militarizing your youth? Why are you building your civil defense?
A lesson in Soviet military doctrine.
Why do they continue to build T-80 tanks, T-72s? Why do they continue to build new strategic bombers? The answer's been right in front of our face all these years, yet we didn't want to accept it. The Soviets, a long time ago, accepted the fact that there's going to be this movement of history.
In a course that was devised long before Reagan became president, they're taught that the Soviet Union is an ominous enemy, despotic, aggressive, and bent on world domination by every means possible.
President Reagan's comments when he first came in, the Soviets will lie, steal, cheat, they'll do everything to further their cause. Because their higher morality, this idea of just and unjust, is the movement of history.
To dramatize the threat, the cadets are invited to imagine themselves as military advisors to the Kremlin against America.
Those capitalist imperialist bloodsuckers could start a nuclear war. It's possible. Let's prepare. Suppose ultimately, as a Russian, as a Soviet, we are able to isolate the #1 capitalist imperialist. We control all of Eurasian landmass, Africa, South America, and Central America. And maybe we've neutralized Canada. We control all of this. Who still has a nuclear weapon? The United States. Is it possible that these guys might lash out at us in their final gasp? Is it possible? You know it. Any questions on this stuff? Scare you?
Ever since the Cold War began more than 35 years ago, the armed forces of the United States have been trained to defend the American dream against the threat from the Soviet Union. As that threat is regarded by most electors as a pressing danger, it is not of itself an issue in the campaign. But with the polls recording a growing fear of nuclear war, relations with the Soviets are of great public concern. The record of the last 4 years is now under cautious attack, but confident defense.
I think that President Reagan has more or less reversed the agenda of Soviet-American relations, so that we're singing more from our sheet of music than from the Soviet sheet of music. Some of that has to do with the Get Well program that President Reagan has inaugurated and successfully carried on in our defense.
Get well?
Get well. We at one time were not well vis-a-vis the Soviet Union, and by 1981, when President Reagan came to office, our situation was deteriorating quite rapidly vis-a-vis the Soviet Union.
4 years ago, Richard Allen helped Reagan to victory. He became National Security Advisor until he had to resign. Now he's back.
In brief, President Reagan has done a great service. Of course, the dialogue is broken down, and the atmospherics are not very pretty to watch or to experience. Soviets have decided not to participate in the Olympics, and there are all sorts of other complications in the relationship. They've walked away from the table. So you could make a case that the Reagan administration has made relations worse. I don't believe that. I don't believe relations have ever been good. I believe that the Russians are stunned by President Reagan. They're incredulous that a man could take the attitudes that he has taken. But I think that these attitudes have put the United States in a very good position, and that the summation of the Reagan record is that we have put the relationship with the Soviet Union on a new footing, although we are still willing to do business with the Soviets.
This summer in Washington, the armed forces marched in somber procession through the streets of the capital city. They were there to bury the remains of the unknown soldier from the war in Vietnam. It was a poignant, ambiguous day. Vietnam had been a defeat which had bitterly divided the nation. In the spirit of the Cold War, America had entered that conflict in the name of freedom to stop communism. With the collapse of that doomed purpose, "No more Vietnams" became a popular expression of deep and lasting public sentiment. And yet at the same time, and often within the same individual, the urge for America to stop communism remained intact. After Vietnam, the brief age of détente was superimposed upon the Cold War, in the expectation that rivalry between the superpowers might be more safely managed. Now the Cold War is in place again, and with it, a resurgence of hostility towards the Soviet Union.
I view the Soviet Union as the president does, the Star Wars evil empire fomenting trouble all over the world. Any country that would try and assassinate the Pope, shoot down commercial airliners, imprison their own people by the millions in the Gulag, invade Afghanistan, and otherwise make trouble every place, has to be watched and controlled. And in the current posture that we're in, the United States is the only available large enough counterweight to deal with the Soviet Union. So we have to be very, very vigilant about the Soviets, because they're very, very dangerous.
I really don't think that they have global ambitions like some people try to blow them out of proportion. I don't think so.
I would feel that someday there's a possibility, you know, that Russia could by whatever means take over America.
What do you think Russian ambitions are?
Oh, to take over the world. That's most definitely.
And how do you want your president, any president, to behave towards the Russians?
Very strongly. I mean, I don't say for him to declare war or nothing, no. But go all the way up to war, if he has to.
You know, I've voted on the Democratic side of things, on the liberal side of things most of my life, but yet I'm aware of the need for maintaining a credibility that suggests to the Soviet Union that this country is willing to put its money and its power where its mouth is. And my sense of Soviet ambitions are that if the Soviets felt that they could conquer Europe, and from Europe leapfrog the Atlantic Ocean, there's no reason they would not do so. There's no question in my mind that if they felt that they could do so, they would do so.
John Steinbrunner is a specialist in foreign policy at the Brookings Institute, and someone who could well hold high office if Mondale wins. He's keenly aware of how public feeling about the Russians affects the conduct of a presidential campaign.
The first and probably primary constraint is that he cannot appear weak or too sympathetic towards the Soviet Union, because the people who feel most intensely are rabidly anti-Soviet and demand really forceful, even aggressive policies against them. So that is a primary requirement for any candidate. And then beyond that, he has tried to capture a sense of how reason towards a dangerous opponent might be played out. And it's much more difficult.
But it makes no difference whether you're a Democrat or a Republican candidate. You have to have that in the forefront of your mind.
It's a very, very strong and I think rather permanent tendency in the American public. American people haven't realized the strength of the United States. They don't seem to believe in it, and therefore one of the problems of a Democratic candidate is to convince the people of our own position. It's been denigrated for a long period of time in the domestic debate, and people have absorbed that view, and that would have to be turned around by a successful Democratic candidate.
I won't hurt you.
Get away from me!
It's the same thought.
Food, ham and eggs.
Would have been a good one. I mean, specific.
I'm leaving, please. We'll talk sometime when you're ready.
Yeah. Ham bone connected to the thigh bone.
The campaign is conducted via television, squeezed in between a cacophony of game shows and soap operas, which are in vicious competition for the ratings.
Okay.
In the middle of all that, there's the news, which is itself a war of the ratings. Each network runs its own news show, a glossy package of peak-time drama. And it's into that as one item of news, competing for attention for a few brief moments of precious airtime, that the next leader of the Western world will sell himself to the American voters.
The point of television, and particularly the fact that most televised statements are very brief in character, because they're tailored to what is assumed to be the attention span of the Americans, is that the oversimplified view, which is a focus on the evil empire as the cause of all our troubles, has a great deal more resonance than would have been the case otherwise. If you had to make if each candidate was making a half-hour speech, the country would get some sense of the complexity of the world. But the television oversimplifies everything, so that we only have a half dozen problems in the world. And they're expressed largely in abstractions, and they're expressed in terms of emotion, which are rather primitive emotions in most cases. And that hatred of the Soviet Union is at the top of the list.
President Reagan called the spade a spade. And when he said that the Soviet Union would lie, cheat, or steal, we all of us knew very well that he was absolutely right. The Soviet Union is an evil empire. And that has to be at the basis of our thinking about the Soviet Union. If it were a benign empire, then I think we should have that as the basis for our thinking. Why should we trick ourselves? President Reagan has spoken some fundamental verities, some truths that people understand. So, and I don't think he's obsessed with it at all. He also recognizes that as evil and as malignant as it may be, it is an empire with which we must deal.
Okay. In handling relations with the Russians, all right? How about strengthening Americans' relationship with our NATO allies?
Ronald Reagan, a Republican, or Walter Mondale, a Democrat?
Whatever the true nature of the Soviet threat, the candidate must constantly monitor the vagaries of public opinion.
Job on handling foreign policy.
If the polls show anything at all, it's that most Americans know very little about the world beyond their borders. They also show that the great majority appear to approve Reagan's conduct of foreign affairs, despite their suspicion that he's more likely than Mondale to lead them into war, which they believe can best be avoided by negotiation between the superpowers.
What about handling relations with Russia? Reagan, Mondale, or offshore?
Mondale for president.
Both sides disinter the polls for portents of public opinion, while both campaigns make similar promises to the same people.
What schedule are you looking at? What does it say on the front? You know, there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done. Okay?
Oh, that's terrific. But we make the commitment now for something that we might have to pay for.
Their merchandise is the dream, their promise to protect it at home and abroad.
I want you to make sure that Jim Kennan is in that meeting.
The most awesome, powerful responsibility in the world lies in the hand that picks up this phone.
In the name of the dream, each candidate will spend almost $50 million to persuade America that he should become the next leader of the Western world.
Vote as if the future of the world is at stake. Mondale, this president will know what he's doing.
Whichever candidate becomes the custodian of the dream, America will not change very much. Long ago, the dream of the downtrodden became a commitment to the American way, a commitment which unites a diverse people and provides the energy that makes the United States the greatest power on earth. That power, sometimes ruthless, sometimes generous, is sustained by a certainty, occasionally disconcerting, usually innocent, which is given expression at the rehearsal for their concert by the children of the schoolhouse in Saunders County, Nebraska.